Hello, today we're here with poet Mihaela Moscaliuc, and she's going to read from her poem and recite, and I'm sorry, and discuss her poem for Sign and Breath. Welcome, Mihaela.
Great to be here. Thank you, Phil. I will start with the poem. Giovanna speaks. He will not remember my face. West to east to west, Romania, July 2021. 1. Departure. I did not come from anger or with anger. My oldest sister saw my mother's face through birth and said she did not curse me as she did the others, wrapped me in her only petticoat, kept me the longest, a month and 3 days. It would have been longer even, had the men not minded my cries as they did and poured palinka in the milk bottle. I met the sister only last year. I did not envy she got to stay and know our mother. When door opened, she recognized me and looked pleased and fed me borscht, but she struggled too hard to see me again. Her boys prowl streets for fights, her insides ache with cuts. My son did not come from anger. I cried like a sky when I felt him ready, cried through and through a solid day and night. I did not want him out. Stay a bit longer, I prayed, for I knew that's all the time we'd have together. 5. Return. When both front tires came loose between villages, riders bonded in the ditch, bushy with mouse tail, spat in their palms to smear off the day's work, and shared slana with chunks of bread, a bottle of palinka someone meant to sell at the market. The woman heading to town to fix the tooth abscess that had erased her features summoned me, swaying her sagging jowl in kind jest. I was sitting by myself inside the minibus, in no hurry to get to any town. It won't move any faster if you sit there, the woman yelled and signaled me to step out. She looked like someone I could trust, but I was too weak to answer about my whereabouts or why I smelled so powerfully of heated railroad tar. And these are the first and the last stanzas of a poem in 5 short sections that follow a character named Giovanna from western to eastern part of Romania and back. Her small son, whose name is a version of hers, Jovan, lives in the east in a state institution for children with severe disabilities. And Giovanna, so this is a larger poem, Giovanna spends 36 hours on train rides, 4 hours on buses, and a night on a train station bench, hoping to see her son. It's July 2021 during the pandemic. He's 7 and she hasn't seen him in almost 3 years. Giovanna grew up in a state institution herself, and she is someone I know well. The poem welled out of rage at both particular injustices the character suffers and at larger systemic ones. And in initial drafts, that's what it was, a poorly veiled rant. And then I realized that that's not what I wanted ultimately. I wanted Giovanna to tell her own story, a version of, I don't know if we still have the New York Times in their own words column, but in verse. And I wanted to attempt and restore some of the dignity that had been stripped away from her life again and again. And she appears as a character in some other poems, including one in my current collection, Cemetery Ink. Um, so to answer your question about oral qualities, capturing the oral qualities of her speech was particularly important here. And it was a great challenge. And I remembered the novel Zolly by Colin McCann, one of the most beautiful novels I think I've ever read, written primarily in the voice of an Eastern European Romani singer, Zolly. And I remembered McCann saying that sometimes he would wait for days, weeks for the voice to come. He had to be patient. He had to try and inhabit that voice and wait for the voice to emerge. Then after a while, he would close his eyes and she would be right there. And that's what I aspired to do. You could say that I was actually waiting for the voice to haunt me. I wanted to write out of and in Giovanna's perspective, with the innocence and the directness with which she speaks. And like McCann, I was interested in, and I'm interested generally in my work in compassion and clarity and making new worlds available.
And you certainly do that, and extraordinarily, the different worlds that come together, I don't want to say collide, but somehow touch one another. The world, the idiomatic, the different way that she talks from, obviously from the Romanian sense, and we can hear that also in your beautiful reading. These kind of blendings or cross-fertilizations of language, how do they affect your writing? And you were also, of course, a translator of Liliana Orsu and other Romanian writers. How do those different language elements enter and feed your sensibility about voice?
That's a great question. And this actually, I think, is a segue into maybe one of your other questions about voice. I believe I'm often thought of as an immigrant poet, and that doesn't bother me at all. It did at first when I desperately wanted to feel kind of unproblematically and pleasantly at home in the English language and in the American culture. But I came to embrace that label. I think even when I'm writing about subjects related, not writing about subjects related to immigration or immigration, even when I'm writing about a fig, I'm still doing it with the awareness and sensibility of someone who is not just irrevocably of two worlds, but of someone who writes out of the personal as much as she writes out of the collective. And again, to return to Colin McCann's quote, we get our voices from the voices of others. And I think, some poets write in their own voice. There's something, their voice is this accruement of distinct features. Even those ineffable qualities that help us recognize certain poems as belonging to a certain writer. I think for me, I think my voice is a cacophony in a way, a cacophony of voices, and that suits me who I am as a person and a writer. And so my own writing, my own voice is very much, I think, informed and fueled by the poems I translate, by the work I do as a translator, but also by this other voices like Giovanna's who insist on becoming visible, insist on entering my own and merging and conflating to some extent with my own. So I'm okay with not having a voice that is distinctly mine, or that that is more of a collage of others.
Yes. And in fact, when I think about the different elements and the different, just in that one poem, you know, the slight inflections, you know, taking out the word "the" before door, or adding, you know, a reference to Polenka and Slavia, those words that give authenticity and the feeling, almost a yearning feeling of being present in someone else's unvarnished reality, that becomes more, we become more aware of them because that reality has inflections that are not part of our usual Americanized speech. And so this area of what do the agriculturists say, you know, areas of borders are the most fecund. And I think that those multiplicity of voices have found such a blending in your work, and you do honor to the work of other writers by sharing and translating their work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moscaliuc, for joining us with Sign and Breath.
Thank you so much.